This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rappin. Joining me this week, two dudes who would probably tell me their darkest secrets before they died and definitely not try to kill me if they somehow survived. I'll get into that later in the episode. This week, I'm joined by, from the Next Issue podcast, Danny.
Hello, everyone, but today's not about me. Today is not about me at all. Right?
Exactly. Today is about the one and only Brian Murray.
Oh, shucks.
Today is Brian's Panelist episode. If you haven't been following the show for a long time, we've been doing a series of Panelist episodes discussing all the various people who make I Read Comic Books into I Read Comic Books, going in reverse chronological order. And with Brian, we are getting towards the bottom of the barrel, which isn't a bad thing, right? Like, this is one of those things where it's
That's
like...
what my wife said, too.
the sweetest of panelists are near the bottom, maybe? I don't know how to describe it. You're all equally fantastic, but nonetheless, Brian, you are one of our earliest panelists on the show. We'll get into that a little bit later because I have a ton of different announcements to make really quick. The IRCB zine, I think, will have ended by the time this show airs on the public feed. So if you haven't checked it out, you can still get a late pledge for the zine. I'll just say that. If you go to ircb.fyi/zine, we have late pledges open. If you want to get a copy of the physical zine mailed to you before we go to print, we're looking to wrap up those numbers probably sometime in late April. So if you're still interested and you missed out on the Kickstarter, you can't get one of those limited edition exclusive tapes, but you can still get a copy of the zine. So go to ircb.fyi/zine. On top of that, I want to say hello to our brand new patrons that joined over the last 2 weeks since we last recorded a live episode. Sugars and Brad, welcome to the IRCB Patreon. You have access to so many things, including an early access to episodes like the one we're recording today before they go out on our public feed, as well as things like IRCB Movie Club, Better Batmobile, Saga of Saga, Giant Days of Our Lives, and literally hundreds of other episodes on just our Patreon that have never been on the public feed. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We're excited to have you. If you're interested, go to patreon.com/IRCB podcast and get on that. But two other things I need to get into. I'm very sorry. I want to shout out two Kickstarters that are running right now. The Ardvan or Addervan, sorry, I mispronounced that, written by Jason Herrifield, art by Nathan Wells, colors by Marcelo Maioli, and letters by Steve Wands. This is a book that's been propped up and supported by Scott Snyder. It looks like a fun little action-adventure book that has a gritty twist on things. The art looks stupendous. There's a link in the show notes for this. I want you all to go check it out. This looks like a fantastic book. It's a little pricey, but at the same time, 40 pages for a first issue is a fantastic sell. You should go check that out in the show notes. I also want to say hello to the Song Survives. This is in pre-launch, or no, it just launched, I think, yesterday before we started recording. This is a sword western one-shot about a humble bard who rides across the desert when he sees a village under attack. Will the bard continue his life of anonymity, singing songs of heroes long past, or will he step up, abandon his solitude for a life of honor? Looks pretty cool. Love a good western. The book's art looks fantastic. And yeah, this is really fun. Both of those links are in the show notes, so go check those out. But we're here today to talk about comic books, as we do every week on I Read Comic Books. So I have two legally mandated questions that I need to ask you, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? You know, Brian, it's your panelist episode, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, I've been good. Can't complain. Michigan Weather Watch. Shit's wild here. It has gone between like 60s and 30s and 70s and 40s over the past week. It's been a ride. My ancient knees are not thrilled with what's going on here.
Okay.
Thankfully, I've had plenty of comic books to take my mind off it. I'm doing a quick Invincible reread since season 3 of the show just finished. Yeah, quick in heavy quotation marks. Not going to talk too much about that because I've talked about that comic so many times on this show. So I'm going to dig into the find I made at like 11:30 last night, which was Aliens versus Avengers.
Yes.
It's a 4-issue miniseries written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Asad Ribic. And I apologize if I butcher these names.
I think it's Ribic.
Ribic.
Yeah.
And colors by Yves Sforzina. And letters by Corey Petit. Again, apologies to any Croatian listeners if I royally fucked up those names. And I know you must all be shocked to see that I found an alien crossover book and decided to read that. I know it's very out of character for me, but how could I not? And this book really like slams into action. There's no like prologue of like, this is how xenomorphs got into a Marvel universe. It starts you off with some synthetics on a space station experimenting on a Kree soldier, trying to get a xenomorph to take root in this captive.
Fuck yeah, dude.
They briefly mentioned that they had wild success with a Skrull xenomorph implantation, which I don't think we're ever going to get to see what like shape-shifting xenomorph came out of that, which breaks my heart a little bit. But their experiments are soon put to a halt when the Wakandan space empire arrives to fuck them up. We cut from there back to Earth, where old man Bruce Banner and old lady Carol Danvers are basically in the last city on Earth, just waiting for the walls to come down and for the world to end. But Valeria Richards is out in the field, and she returns with a xenomorph egg and the promise of a bioweapon that will save the planet, and nothing goes wrong.
Oh, cool. So just they
wrapped
just
it
a
up very
good time.
Yeah.
No, obviously she was actually implanted with a xenomorph while out in the field, so that busts loose and shit gets crazy. I've read the first 3 issues, which are the 3 that are out as of recording. I sent a screenshot from the 3rd issue to our chat last night of Mr. Sinister using a gun that shoots face huggers to fire into a crowd of unsuspecting humans.
It looks like a t-shirt cannon, and I love it.
I know, right?
I love it.
It basically is.
I love that so much. Oh man, it blows my mind that Assad Ribic is on this book, because like what a weird pick for an alien book. Like, does he draw the xenomorphs really cool? I mean, like, how do you like Ribic's art on this book?
Yeah, you don't really see much of the xenomorphs.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, you do, but not in any kind of like not the close up detailed shots that you would get in like an actual alien book.
Gotcha.
It's more like you see them crawling on the walls in the distance as our heroes are trying to like fight them off, or you'll see like, you know, the Hulk crushing one in his hand or something like that.
Very cool.
I'm a big fan of this book. I love it from the beginning, like especially that first sequence that you talked about, Brian. These synthetics are dressed up as Shi'ar at first, which is like, okay, with the Shi'ar torturing the Kree, but then there's the first reveal, like these are synthetics, which is one of my favorite tropes in the alien. In any alien thing, when you find out who the synthetic is, that's usually my favorite part, because you never see it coming. And the fact that this just happened so quickly in this one. But yeah, there's a lot of bonker stuff in this one, and I can't wait to see how it ends. So I'm glad you picked it up. You're gonna have to wait a little bit because these have been coming out almost quarterly.
Yeah, I think the next one is like end of April, like April 23rd or something like that.
Okay.
I pre-ordered it, so.
But at least the end is in sight, not like, you know, like Secret Wars that we were waiting on like months to see when it would finally finish.
Yeah, exactly. Well, interesting, fantastic pick, Brian. I probably should. I think I read the first issue of this, and I need to go back and actually read the rest. So maybe I'll wait till that last issue comes back or comes out, that I can read it all in one go. But Danny, let's kick things over to you. How have things been? How have comic books been?
Things have been great. This weekend's been pretty busy. I had a tournament yesterday for Star Wars Unlimited, in which I did not do very well, but I played a really fun Count Dooku Swarm deck. So my goal is just to flood the board with these little Vulture Droid ships until I can get my big, you know, like the Invisible Hand and all those big Separatist ships out there.
Okay.
I love this mechanic because this is that Vulture Droid ship is the first card that you can actually have 15 copies of in your deck, as opposed to just the 3 for like a normal card.
Wow.
So it's pretty insane bananas. So it's a really fun game. We just got a new booster, like a new booster just dropped like a couple of weeks ago. So like everyone's trying to scramble and figure out the new meta. So love that. And then in the evening, I had a book club at one of my local shops, Boomerang Comics in Louisville, Texas. So for anybody that's in Texas, great shop. We do once a month, book club, and the comic I'm going to talk about is the one we read. This is Daredevil, The Men Without Fear. This is a 5-issue miniseries from, I don't know, like the 90s, I think. Written by Frank Miller with art by John Romita Jr., inks by Al Williamson, colors by Christy Shelley, and letters by Joe Rosen. One of the reasons we picked this to read was because we read Daredevil Born Again last year at some point, maybe when the trailer dropped or something like that for the series. And right now the new Born Again series on Disney Plus is like going full throttle right now. Like as of the recording, I think we're like 6 episodes in into the first season. So we wanted to read some more Daredevil, and this was I read this before in the past, and I was really, really happy to revisit it because I remember how much fun I had with this one. So this book retells the origin of Daredevil, reimagined by Frank Miller, who pretty much worked on a lot of this in the 80s. So he's retelling his own story and recontextualizing it in this series. It follows young Matt. He's the son of battling Jack Murdock, and he's a boxer, and he grows up in the rough streets of Hell's Kitchen. You probably know the story of the Daredevil. And after saving a man from oncoming traffic, Matt is blinded by radioactive chemicals. See TMNT spinning out of that later on.
Yeah.
But his other senses were heightened to superhuman levels. And it talks about like Matt, you go through each issue, tells you a little bit. It's like kind of the highlights of the run by Frank Miller. So interesting that he wanted to just kind of go back and maybe touch back on some of that stuff, maybe retcon a few things for going forward. This really feels like his take on like a Daredevil year one type of thing. He had just done that with Batman. Or he was about to do that with Batman. There you go.
That's what I just picked this up this weekend. Batman Year One, first printing according to Zap Comics.
Ooh, we didn't even talk about any of this. This is all just like happening by happenstance.
Listen, I'll get into it.
I love it. But yeah, it's really cool. Like the first issue deals with him being more of a kid and losing his father and gaining his powers, training with Stick, and then we got the college years where he meets Elektra, who I love Elektra in this book. And I understand that she's maybe an underwritten and underdeveloped character, but she's also like just a chaos machine. I love how every time she comes into Matt's life, it's like he just forgets about everything. He doesn't care about anything other than being with Elektra, and they are probably really toxic for each other, but it's really fun. It's really fun to read. And then you finally have this inspired a lot of the original Netflix series. Like if you remember that the hallway scene and the fight and him saving somebody that was being human trafficked in the stockyards or the shipyard, like all those big battles, they come from specifically from this book. John Romita Jr. draws the black outfit, which is like sweats and the Adidas kicks and just the bandana in his head. I love that. I love that outfit. And I really also like John Romita's art in this one. I think it's just one of his best works. I've talked about in the show, maybe on my show. I don't know. I talk about it a lot because unfortunately it comes up a lot. I'm not a big fan of current John Romita Jr. because I know that he can do stuff like this. He can do stuff like the World War Hulk. Things that he did with Greg Pak.
Yeah,
that's the Romita Jr. art that I love so much. And this one is just really heavy lines, and coupled with Williamson's inking, it probably does a lot of the heavy lifting too here.
Totally.
But it just looks really gritty, and it just matches the tone. It feels, although it looks different from Frank Miller's artwork, it feels in that same vein of like Dark Knight Returns and all that edgy, cool bullshit that I love so much every once in a while, right?
As long as you admit it, Danny, that's fine.
Yeah. It's in this story also leans a lot into the street level violence, which is really cool. Like I mentioned, Elektra just comes in. We meet the Kingpin, although we don't really see all the stuff that happens there because that's more in the Born Again storyline. But I would say this is if you want to get into Daredevil, or if you ever have a friend that tells you like, I want to get into Daredevil, I would recommend this for a new reader, just because it really gives you like an understanding of who the character is. I think the only thing that's missing a little bit, I would say, is it doesn't really lean into the religious aspect of the character, and it doesn't really lean into, like, you never get to see his radar like drawn out like we do in more modern comics.
And the Daredevil movie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this one also inspired the Ben Affleck movie a lot.
Oh, absolutely, totally, for better or for worse.
Yeah, so I would say like this is just kind of like something you really want to check out. Very tonally different from something like Mark Waid's run, where Daredevil's in San Francisco, you know, living it up. But I think Matt is such a complex character because he has this righteous sense of justice and he has this like Catholic guilt, but he's also super horny all the time. So
that's Catholics, baby.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I really, really recommend it. I don't know if you guys have checked this out. If not, I really think you should. Just because it's probably one of my favorite Frank Miller things too. Like, it doesn't feel like he leans too much into some of the other stuff that maybe in later years you're like, come on, Frank Miller, you need to chill out a little bit.
It's not as edgy as a lot of some Frank Miller things.
It's not as it's definitely not as edgy as some of the Frank Miller's later works or previous works, really.
You know what's really funny about this run is I think I have an original print of this run.
It's the foil covers, the red foil covers. It's very recognizable. You if you have it single issues,
No, you know what? I might have the Born Again run. I think I might have his run from the 80s. Not this one. Yeah. So yeah, but I've honestly never read this book before. So which like I picked up Batman Year One because I really do love this run. Like, this is a really, really good Batman story just in general. I guess I didn't realize that this was his like Daredevil Year One type story, and it's like, man, maybe I should check that out because I do like Daredevil as a character. And you know, with all the recent Daredevil, you know, news and all the TV show and stuff, maybe it's time to go back and re-experience that character who is pretty great. Most of the time.
Yeah, it's funny with all the like with the new Daredevil show coming out. You would think that I would be seeing a bunch of clips of it on TikTok or whatever. Yeah. All I'm seeing is him flirting with She-Hulk from the She-Hulk show. That's it. I keep getting clips from that.
Okay. That's it. You know, maybe that's all we need to really know about the MCU's new Daredevil series.
I think the algorithm just really knows me. Like, that's the kind of shit. It's like, yeah, he wants this. He wants rom-com Marvel.
Yeah, exactly.
And fair enough.
Yeah. Well, Danny, you've inspired me. Maybe I'll go back and read some Daredevil, because honestly, I had a tough time coming up with a book that I actually want to read next for this show. There's stuff that I'm going to read, but maybe Daredevil: The Man Without Fear is a book that I should look into sooner. But let me talk about where I have been in terms of reading comics. It's been a weirdly busy week in terms of, I've just been watching a lot of TV. I've got myself caught up on The White Lotus, and I have been reading Homestuck, which I'm going to get into later. But Homestuck, if you're not aware, don't even Google it. I don't want you to know. Let me just explain it to you. But I did sit down and I read a manga that I got in the mail, or I picked up from the comic book shop a few weeks ago. I remember when I saw this in the previews out of the blue, I was like, oh, one-shot manga. It's like 400 pages, looks kind of cool. The premise is interesting. And this is a book called Confession by Nobuyuki Fukumoto with art by Kaiji Kawaguchi. And the story, this is published by Kodansha, I guess, for anyone out there. So maybe you know it's not just your standard Shonen Jump title, but the story follows two guys, Asai and Ishikura. They're on a hike up to the 32-meter peak of Mount Obari when a snowstorm suddenly hits. And while trying to make their way to like a communal cabin that kind of exists on the mountain for hikers, Ishikura severely injures his leg to the point where like he can barely walk on it, and he's bleeding profusely. And they suddenly become stranded in the middle of this snowstorm, right? Like Asai can't carry Ishikura for so far. They don't know where this cabin is. They think they're going in the right direction. So, believing that he's going to die, Ishikura reveals his darkest secret to Asai. And shortly after the storm suddenly clears, and Asai discovers that they're very close to this cabin. So after Ishikura tells Asai this whole deep dark secret, their friendship takes a bit of a turn as they have to wait for like mountain rescue to come get them, because Ishikura isn't going to be able to make it down the mountain otherwise, and he's kind of on the verge of dying, right, because of the blood loss and stuff. So the story, like, and I feel like I've told you a lot about what this book is, but this happens in like the first 10 pages, and after that, the whole book becomes this constant like mind battle between Asai and Ishikura, as you're mostly in Asai's mind, and he starts to go paranoid, because I'll tell you that the thing that Ishikura admits to is pretty grim. And so Asai is like, am I gonna get killed? Is this guy to kill me because I know this dark secret about him? Like, he could go to jail because of it. If I told anybody, this could be bad. And he's like, certainly he can't think that. And he's constantly going back and forth in his head, never talking to Ishikura about, because to bring it up could make things even worse, you know? It's very interesting, like, the paranoia and anxiety that builds in this book, and it's done pretty well. The last probably 100 pages are severely odd, but I don't think bad. And I don't want to spoil it, because I do think, like, overall, this is a pretty good read. There's like some bumpy moments where you're kind of like, well, if you just would have said one thing, maybe this wouldn't have happened that way. But ultimately, I like the kind of mind game that Asai puts himself into, like, unintentionally. And then when he does eventually talk to Ishikura, like, the left turns and the zigs and the zags of the book are fun enough that I was like, you know what? If this would have been multiple volumes, I would have been sick of it fast. But for like a single one-off, this is perfect. It ends in a very weird twist, but I kind of liked it overall. It's a pretty good book. So if you're looking for like just a one-off book to pick up, I think Confession from Kodansha is a pretty good book overall.
I love how, like, across all cultures is this running theme of, if men would just talk about their feelings, things might be a little easier.
Yeah. But you know, it's interesting though, because this reminds me of like kind of the mind games that you get into in books like Death Note. Death Note's the only one that comes to mind. But again, drawn out story.
So these two are flirting.
No. I would not say that. But it's less flirty than Death Note. But that's the only one that comes to mind, because there is like a lot of like, if I do this and then I suddenly do this thing, blah blah blah. Like, there's a lot of that mind game stuff going on. And then there's this classic, just like, oh ho ho, you forgot this one detail moment that is very funny to me. So overall, it's a pretty good book. Like, I think, again, it's not a perfect book, but like 4 out of 5, I think you have a good time if you read it.
I saw a great TikTok about Death Note the other day. It was just POV, you're Light Yagami's sister, and so you just hear like his dialogue muffled as if it's coming through a wall, just him cackling about eating potato chips.
Why is he always eating chips? Mom, Light ate all the chips again.
Oh man. Well, as I said, I also read Homestuck, but I'm going to talk about that more because, spoilers, that is on the top of my pile. But let's move over to books that are on the top of our pile, comics that are new or old, or just something you're trying to get off of your shelf. I want to shout out some of the folks hanging out with us on Discord today who are reading books, and we asked what you've been reading. Emmett's going to be reading Building Stories by Chris Ware, which when I first read that, I was like, oh, a series of stories about buildings. That sounds fun. And it's like, no, I think it's about making stories. But okay. And Peyton is going to be reading Fun Home, plus a bunch of other books that they listed on the Discord. But I'm only picking one. That's the rules, okay? But yeah, let's move on. Let's see, Brian, what is on the top of your pile this week?
Yeah, this was not intentional, but it's actually another Hickman book.
Oh,
I picked up the first volume of his Ultimate Spider-Man run off of Hoopla.
Let's go.
As Danny is now displaying, lovely cover. I've been meaning to read this forever, just because like I'm a Spider-Man fan, so a new Spider-Man book, I should check it out probably. But as I was thinking more about it, I'm like, is it because I'm old? Like, do I want to read this because I want to see what happens when a middle-aged man becomes a superhero?
I mean,
and I think kinda.
Listen, it's like, pretty fun. I'll say that.
The more I think about it, the more I'm interested in, like, yeah, that idea of like, how is it different when a man in his 30s or 40s becomes a hero versus a man in his teens or his 20s? You know, like how is his thought process going to be different? What different mistakes is this Peter Parker going to make versus teen Parker?
I mean, I'll say there's a lot less impulsive thoughts. That's for sure.
And is excited to see like Peter Parker be happy for 2 seconds.
I'm very excited for you, Brian. I love this series. I've been reading it monthly ever since it started. And every time I read one, I'm like, oh, this is definitely the best Ultimate book. And then I read The Ultimates by Dennis Camp, and I'm like, no, this is the best Ultimate book. So like, they keep going back and forth. So, and the best part is that it's pretty standalone. Like, even though there's other Ultimate stuff happening in the other universe, the book itself, as of right, this is the latest issue 15 that I showed earlier. Patreons, if you want to check that out. Yeah, it's just so much fun. So, and Jonathan Hickman, like, I mean, he's a great storyteller. Marco Cicchetto's art is amazing. I think you might get one guest artist per volume or something like that, but for the most part, it's Marco Cicchetto. So yeah, fantastic stuff.
Yeah, my only like bit of trepidation is when I was reading the like summary, just like, following the Maker's false flag attack, blaming Tony Stark. I'm like, oh, how much background do I fucking need for this?
Listen, you know all that you need to know based off of that little synopsis.
Yeah. I know who the Maker is.
Yeah.
You're already ahead of a game there.
I'm ahead of a lot of people. Yeah.
Exactly. I think you'll have a lot of fun.
That's Reed Richards with the big head.
Yeah.
Cool head.
A Hickman character with a weird helmet? No fucking way. No, I think you'll have a really good time with this, Brian. I especially am excited to see you read some of the bits with J. Jonah Jameson. I think you're going to have some fun for sure.
I do love JJ.
Well, yeah, let us know how that goes. But Danny, what is on top of your pile this week?
Well, Mike, I'm staying on the Daredevil train.
Wow. Okay.
Because apparently there's no Batman books coming out this week. I checked
for the first time.
Actually. Yeah, I double checked.
It's a weird fifth week in comics, right? Like, this is kind of a fifth week.
Kind of, yeah. I will quickly shout out Absolute Green Lantern, the new Al Ewing, Benoit Lindsay book. Go check that out. I have read it, so it's not on top of my pile thanks to DC. But man, oh man, really cool. But what I will be reading is Daredevil: Cold Day in Hell #1. This is written by Charles Soule with art by Steve McNiven. So you know it's going to look gnarly as hell because Steve McNiven's drawing it. Steve McNiven did the Old Man Logan, just to give you some context of what that should look like.
Who's on inks in this book? That's actually the most important part of Steve McNiven's work.
And I don't have that detail.
It's so weird that it's not credited because, in my opinion, like, Ivan Reis has done a lot of the inking on Steve McNiven, if I'm not mistaken. And Ivan Reis's inks genuinely amplify McNiven's art in a way that, like, I've seen him with other inkers and it is not as good. So fingers crossed we get someone like stellar because
it's a 3-issue series because it's like kind of their Old Man Logan type of story. Jesus. So it may just be McNiven doing it all.
Okay.
So it could be, maybe that's why there's no other, but I did look and I didn't see anybody else credited. And Marvel refuses to send me previews to review, so I can't get you that information.
Yeah.
So whoever's listening on Marvel, reach out to us. Anyways, in this series, hell has gone cold, because of course it has. After a horrific series of events, the world is in shambles. Matt Murdock is old, and his powers have faded to nothing. Matt will not, however, sit by and watch his fellow New Yorkers suffer, so instead of swinging around the city with his billy club, he slings soup at the food center for the poor. But when a mysterious, wrinkly old man interrupts a secret convoy, causing an explosion, a deadly gas fills Hell's Kitchen, and this tale takes a turn that will change how you look at the Man Without Fear. This will only be 3 issues, as I mentioned. And I feel like stuff like this is why Marvel should have their own kind of black label, like whatever imprint.
They tried that, but yeah.
You could very clearly tell me, like, this is a standalone thing. You can go read it on its own. It doesn't affect continuity. It's not affected by other, like all the 10,000 other Daredevil books that are on the shelf. But I think we've discussed how big fan I am of Charles Soule. And then, like I said, Steve McNiven, like, I already know what I'm in for. I've seen some of the Steve McNiven's been posting some art and like designs and stuff on Instagram. And they look like this old man Daredevil looks like the ratty old costume, kind of like stitched together. It looks pretty cool. So I'm very excited for this, to see like how an old man Matt, like how much is that guilt and had that the stuff that he's gone through his life really kind of ate him up and changed him as a person, or can he still kind of persevere with his sense of justice? So I'm excited to see where this goes from there.
So his super tailor did not make it through the end of the world with him. He's
No.
doing all his own work now.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, like Charles Soule, great writer. Stephen Kiven, pretty solid artist for the most part. I think this will be a really fun trade. I think, like you said, Danny, Marvel did try like a black label. They had Marvel Knights for a while, right? That's where we got the infamous Garth Ennis Punisher run, for better or for worse. But like, I think Marvel Knights it's always failed because they couldn't market it right? I don't know what DC did to make these absolute books so marketable, but like, holy shit, they're like they're selling like hotcakes,
Yeah.
So if Marvel could figure out a similar world where they could do like adult comics, and like let it stick away from the continuity, I'm sure that they could be printing money more so than they are right now.
Yeah.
An actual like adult comics with adult themes, not the Punisher, but he says fuck now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I gave you a book earlier for beginning Daredevil readers, like at the beginning of his career, and now it looks like we're gonna look at one for at the end of his career. So great bookend right there.
Yeah, I like it. Well, let me talk about a book that is on the top of my pile. I guess like I meant this. Yeah, it's a book. I guess I didn't really get into earlier. I did go to ZapCon in Wayne, New Jersey, which is like a little miniature comic convention held at this gymnasium, essentially. Saw a bunch of like local Kubert School graduates. So like the Andy Kubert School is here in New Jersey, up in Madison, New Jersey. Funny enough, where I used to live. If I'd only stayed there for like another 2 years, I could have been right down the road from a pretty big comic school, which would have been interesting. But yeah, I picked up a copy of a 1988 print of the Dark Knight Batman Year One, which is very cool. It looks like a comic book, don't know what else to say. I also grabbed a couple of other things, met a couple of artists, handed out some business cards, went through like a huge backlog of comics so this convention is put on by Zap Comics, which is like I don't want to say a chain, but they have multiple locations in New Jersey. Just like they're pretty prolific, very big supporter of like comic books in general. Clearly they have a connection with the Kubert School. They kind of push some of those artists and stuff, but it's nice to like see it go to a mini convention that is very artist focused and very comics focused, and that's all that it was, right? They had an artist alley, they had a little area to play like retro video games, because that seems to be a thing at every convention in New Jersey. And then they had like a big old like 50 to 100 long boxes of trades and single issues and stuff. I only went through the trades with a friend of mine that went with me, took a couple pictures, got a couple indie books and stickers and things like that, things that you get at a convention. But it was fun to go in for like $10 and just hang out for a few hours. It's pretty nice. But yeah, so I had a good time there. Shout out to Claire Connolly, who did my tattoo and sold me some of her zines. I've got one here that is called I Am a Tomato. It's a little 4-page zine that was very, very cute, and I can go through it to you guys. You should go give Claire some money, but like, it opens on like a seed being planted. Very cute, very nicely drawn. We go to the next page, and the seed has grown and it has become more of a tomato plant. And then we get to the last page, and the seed is fully grown, and it says the thing, I never asked to be born.
Girl, same.
I thought that was fun.
I was expecting like a little twist on the story, like maybe it turns into like a killer tomato plant or something.
Right. That would be Claire's thing.
Even like darker.
She does draw some really awesome monsters, which is fun. She'll be on the show later this year, which is going to be cool. But and then I also picked up a piece of original art for like $100. It was a nice little like watercolor of. I am obsessed with skulls and death. I don't understand it, guys. I'm just like a cool fucking edgelord from 1997. When I was little, I had a skull pog slammer that was like my most prized possession as like a 6-year-old. So that's just who I am. I think that's just a consistency throughout my whole life. But
the most cheerful edgelord you've ever met.
yeah. But yeah, I beyond that, the book that is on the top of my pile. Sorry to do things out of order here, folks. I'm reading Homestuck, and I'm very sorry to say that out loud. This is a series, a webcomic by Andrew Hussey. I wouldn't recommend Googling this because it's a very confusing story. It's a very confusing thing to even explain. It's very hard to describe like Homestuck in general because it was a series that ran from 2009 to 2016 with thousands of entries in it, right? Like multiple pages being posted per day, multiple flash animations as part of it. This is like a multimedia thing that had music. Funny enough, Brian, our old roommate, Kurt Blakesley, did some music on this thing, and I was
kidding.
like, no way. Like, I blew my mind when his name came up for it. But anyways, I'll try.
We didn't actually live with Kurt. We lived with Brandon.
Oh, we live with Brandon. No, we live with Brandon. I forgot. But I recognize the last name. That's what's important. But the story of Homestuck, I will try to briefly describe it, is a 13-year-old kid named John Egbert is celebrating his birthday, and a new game has been released called Spurb, S-B-U-R-B. The story is told from the perspective of like an old command line style game where you kind of just give John commands, like, John, do a little dance, and then he'll do a little dance, or John, throw yourself out the window, and then he'll say, I would never do something like that. I don't know why you would even ask me to do that. It makes no sense for me to throw myself out the window. It gets very up its own ass with its descriptions sometimes, as you'll get like paragraphs of description about something that's seemingly innocuous, using weird 2009 edgelord, I'm trying to be overzealous in the sense of it's ironic or something mentality. As the story unfolds, we meet John's friends, and one of them begins to play a game, which is sort of like this play the game Spurb, which is like a Sims thing that allows her to control John's house and build things using grist. And if I start to explain it more, it's going to take all day. But like the story goes on, demons show up, a meteor strikes the earth, destroying everything. John is the person who's supposed to save the world, maybe, but we meet other characters like Jade and Dave, who are other people, and you get a very Earthbound-esque kind of cast of characters. And if you're not familiar with Earthbound, a lot of this starts to really fall apart, I think. And yeah, this is just the beginning. Like, we meet other dimensional creatures. We meet people in the future, people in the past. There's like this multiple timeline thing going on. Pieces of the story are being told out of order, and then they all kind of line up. So you'll get like a story about John and then a story about Dave, and you'll find out that John's story happened much later than Dave's story. And then they finally line up on this like thing where they chat over AOL Instant Messenger, which they call Pester Log. It's a lot.
You see like the slow fade in of the Charlie Day string board thing coming in as Mike talks.
So lest I get too even deeper into this, we get like jester style demons that are attacking because jesters and clowns are like a central theme that kind of exists in the world. We get more backstory on each character as the story goes on. We get like, there's this J.J. Abrams level like mystery box vibe where like every time they reveal something, we realize that wasn't actually the box inside of the box. There's like another box inside. Like, it kind of is an infinite story. And like, there was an article written about Hussey a few years ago with the Washington Post where he was like telling this extremely absurdist story in like in the same vein that you would write out like the Odyssey, where there's some things planned, but then he was getting info from people on a forum that were like giving him suggestions of commands for the characters to take or actions for them to take, which is why you'll get these weird just non sequitur moments where it's like, you know, to do a backflip onto the springboard, and it's like, there's not even a springboard in this room. Like, why are you suggesting that? It's like, oh, because there was external like commands being sent in. There's a lot of references to old video games and like over the top writing that really grates against me a lot of the time. But yeah, this ran from 2009 to 2016. It's broken into 7 acts, which after Act 5, Act 6 is broken up into 2 separate parts, and each of those parts have 3 sub-acts within them. And then beyond
the Attack on Titan style.
Yeah, it's really bonkers. Act 6, from my understanding, is like broken up into multiple parts as well, or Act 7 is broken up into multiple parts. It's really a lot. And I got through Act 3 up to the intermission. And I read like 1,800 pages, and like Act 5 alone, or Act 4 alone, is apparently like another 1,000. There's like way too many pages. It's such a long fucking story. It's crazy. And it's insane the amount of comics and prose you have to read, and little flash games, little actual interactable flash games you have to play. And I can't recommend anybody read this. Don't read this. I know you're curious because I'm talking about it. Don't put yourself through this, because in order to read this in its entirety, in a proper way that it's meant to be read, you have to go to GitHub and download a special a package to install everything on your computer so that you can get Flash and all these other referential things working. I don't recommend anybody do it, but I'm on this epic journey where the more I actually talk, like if I was going to go into detail about this, you would see how excited I am, because I hate reading this thing. When I sit down to read it, I really have a bad time. But then I go and talk to people or explain it to someone, and I go, oh, wait, actually, is this story kind of cool? Fuck, did I actually have a good time subconsciously? But my like conscious mind was dreading reading the thousands of lines of text that I have to read for this entry. Like it's really weird.
So, I think what you're doing, Mike, is that in explaining it, you are transforming it into something good.
Maybe
like you are telling the version of Homestuck that you want it to be.
Perhaps. I don't know. It's a very weird book, very weird comic. At one point, Viz did do a printed version of this, which makes no sense because there are actual like full-fledged multi-minute long Flash videos that you have to watch, like that are just explaining the story. And I'm like, how does that get printed? What do you even do? Right? Like, how do you print a movie? I don't know. But it's very weird. So if you're a Homestuck fan out there, reach out. I'm at the end of Act 3. I'm about to start the intermission. I haven't read anything of Problem Sleuth, which is a previous comic that Hussey did. Supposedly that might be important, but someone help me. Please, someone come shoot my computer in the head because I don't know what to do about this, but I'm going to keep reading it.
Somebody can put Mike's MacBook out of its misery.
Exactly.
Don't worry, Mike. I'll never click on a .net/index that .html link.
That's very, very smart. That's very, very smart. Anyways, let's we have to move on. Otherwise, I'm going to keep talking about the idiosyncrasies that is Homestuck. So, Brian,
we should release 2 versions of this episode, with and without the Homestuck, and see which one gets more listens.
The answer is the second one, Danny, for sure. But yeah, Brian, it's your panelist episode. Welcome. We're so excited that you've been here since episode 38. At this point, we're getting into double and single digits for people. Your very first episode was episode 38, The Problem with Pants. I'm certain that was a thing that you phrased and uttered out of your mouth, if only because I remember when we were like, oh, this is a funny title. We don't have to just use Mike's description of the episode as the title. But yeah, this episode, weirdly enough, does not even feature me. I was not on the episode. It was Nick, our old pal John, and Brian. You guys were talking about something. I don't know. The Mixcloud link didn't work for me. But yeah, it's an old episode. Talked about Runaways number 4, We Are Robin number 4, Mythic number 4, Book of Death. Yeah, crazy stuff. So I guess to start things out, how the heck did you get involved with this friggin' show? What the hell even happened there?
Yeah, it was mostly proximity based. I'm kidding, but only kind of. Like, I'm sure that the fact that like I was living in the same house as Mike at the time, and all I had to do to record was go down to the basement where Mike was recording, because that was back when we all like when Nick and Paul came over to the house to record in Mike's basement.
Yeah.
I was in the comic book club back in college with Mike. And so I had finally like gotten my big kid job and was finally bringing in like any kind of extra income at all. So one of the first things I did was go down to Vault of Midnight, shout out Vault of Midnight, and set up my pull list, my very first pull list. This is right around the time that Jane Foster was coming around as Thor.
Oh yeah.
So I think that was the first book I subbed to. But it just kind of worked out that like as I was getting into comics in like a real way for the first time, this podcast was happening in the basement of my house.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that seems cool as shit. Let's see if I can get in on that.
I think it also helped. I think you were also writing reviews for Destroy the Cyborg back in the day too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, yeah, it was it's one of those things where it's like, if you are my friend, eventually I get you to work on a project with me. There's just no getting around it. But yeah, you know, you've been here since the very, 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 very early days, which is bonkers. But your life has not revolved just around comics. I don't know, Danny, if you have any questions about the very earliest days of the podcast, I mean, now's the time to get them out there.
I mean, I think it makes sense, right? If I lived in a house with you guys and y'all were talking comics, like I would want to get in on it too. I mean, it took me a while to get in on it, and I live very far away, but I still did. So it just makes sense that it's so much closer. But Brian, I guess my question is like, how how was it record? Like, what was the cadence of the recording? Like, how was it recording? Or like when you weren't on an episode, were you like bummed out because you're still in the house and you're like, I read comics this week too, or like, I don't know, like, let me in.
No, I mean, that was back when Kate and I had just started dating, like a year before this. So we weren't living together yet. So a lot of the times I was over at Kate's place when Mike happened to be recording. So that was, otherwise I was just upstairs trying not to make noise because I didn't want to be background noise on the recording, because that was back before we had all the cool editing tricks that Xander has picked up in the last decade.
Yeah. I mean, this is when we were still recording some things on Mumble, right? Because we wouldn't invite everybody over. We would record people's audio through Mumble. So I would just record whatever.
God, yeah.
But like, I think at this point, if you and Nick and John were recording, this is when I think we had switched to everybody recording on their own end through Audacity. So this is when we were uploading to Dropbox and doing all the other stuff. So yeah, it would have been something like that. And the fact that I was just like, yeah, you guys can run the show when I'm not there. Nick's been on the show enough. Like, you guys can figure it out is wild to me, because I feel like I now have like steel grip on everything, where I'm just like, all right, I'll relinquish control this week and let you guys go. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know
when you're not going to be there. Like we have all been doing this for 10 years now. So like,
that is
we
also
can all
true.
do a pretty good mic impression at this point.
Sure.
So you never had like a Zune or something, like an actual physical podcasting recorder like tool?
Well, no, because it would have been like John was at his house, Nick was at his house, and Brian was at our house, I think. So I think it would have been everybody recording separately, kind of like what we are right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. But in the very early days, it was just a microphone hooked up to Mike's laptop.
Yeah, we did do some episodes like that, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back in the day, kid.
Wait till you get Paul and Nick's episodes. Paul and Nick's episodes are coming up next, and we could talk about the earliest days, I think. But yeah, it was just recording in our basement.
Wow.
Yeah. But, okay, outside of the podcast, though, this is what we're here to actually talk about. Like, Brian, who's not reading comic books, you're a pretty dedicated TTRPG player. You play a lot of tabletop RPG games. I guess you and I know each other simply because of tabletop RPG games, right? Like, you were just my buddy's brother's roommate, and you were playing D&D, and they were like, oh, Mike's interested, send them over there. Which, funny enough, I found out years later that friend had been in a dedicated D&D game and just didn't invite me to it. So like, fuck you, Jeff. But still, you and I got together. We met because of tabletop RPGs, and you've been playing for longer than I have, which is bonkers to me. So like, what's your history there? And like, do you have a system that you like the most?
Yeah, I've actually, looking at the calendar, I've been playing D&D for almost exactly 20 years.
Holy shit.
Because I started playing in the spring of 2005 when I was a junior in high school. We played something that like on paper was D&D 3.5, but none of us knew how to run a game. So it was really just like create a character and then do a fight and then level up and then do a fight and then level up.
Right.
Like the very first time I played D&D, we ran up through level 13 in a single night.
Oh my God.
That's awesome, dude.
I mean, I say night, that's from like 6 in the afternoon until 5 o'clock the next morning.
Right.
But it's mostly been D&D ever since then. I was an early adopter of 4th edition. For better or for worse. There are things that I miss about it, but I do think that 5th ed was an improvement overall. Outside of D&D, I haven't really played a whole lot. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I want to try. Like, I'd love to play Lancer.
Oh, Lancer, yeah.
The big mech TTRPG sounds cool as hell. I've played a little bit of Cyberpunk Red. Back when Cyberpunk 2077 was first coming out, Xander ran a little one-shot for a few of us. And I've since played 2077 like 6 times, and I want more. I've got the itch to like get a Cyberpunk game off the ground, but I also don't have any ideas for what to do with it.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like percolating back there. Play a lot of Starfinder.
What we should do, though, Brian, and sorry, we're just going to talk D&D really quick. We should play Cyborg, right? So it's like Morkborg, but it's cyberpunk. Just throwing it out there. Pretty easy to learn, and it's brutal as hell.
I like that in theory, but I'm a character guy. Like I get attached to characters.
Totally.
And Morkborg is the opposite of that.
Absolutely.
So, Brian, are you the type of player that loves just to like the story and kind of improvising, or are you more like we have to get all the numbers right and then do this like specifically, like crunchy or not? Like where are you?
I'm a big crunch guy. Because a lot of the times, like, I don't know really what to do, and having all of this rules framework helps guide me into like figuring out like this is what I can do, and once I know what's possible, then I can start making choices and deciding what I should do or shouldn't do.
Okay, you'd hate playing with me then.
I've played.
We just fly by the seat of our pants over here.
I've played some like rules light systems. Like I can't remember what was that. Divinity. Was that the game that we played, Mike?
Or Divination. Yeah.
It's a very cool game. It's all like it's tarot card based instead of dice based. So it's very like cool as a system, but I knew it wasn't for me when I was just like, what do I do? What can I do? I don't know. Like I don't know what actions are available to me.
Right. It's very fluid. Like it's very open. Like open more than I think some systems like Pathfinder or Starfinder or D&D will like say, oh, here's like 50 designated things. Now you can do anything, but if you don't know what to do, there's at least this rubric that you can start from.
Yeah, like I know like this set of abilities that my character has, and I know that when I level up, I will get access to this ability.
Right. And I completely cut you off, but the other game that I know you've played a lot of because I've been part of those games is Starfinder, right? Starfinder is that definition of crunch, in my opinion.
Yeah. Starfinder is for sure. It's Pathfinder in space. And Pathfinder is basically D&D 3.75 when it all comes down to it.
Though 2E is kind of its own thing now, right?
Yes, Pathfinder 2nd Edition is wildly different. And is cool in a lot of ways. I've been in a 2nd Edition game for probably about a year now. But I still don't know 80% of the rules.
Unlike Starfinder, in which we have memorized, right, at this point?
Yeah, in Starfinder, I've been running these games for the past 6 years or so, and I know a solid 40% of the rules there. I only have to ask Xander what a rule is like twice a session now. Right.
Or one of us will pull out something really weird. You'll be like, hold on a second. Let me see if that actually is how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the flip side to having so many like abilities spelled out in the book, is that I can't possibly remember all the abilities every character has. And so sometimes like Michael pull out some crazy shit that his character has always been able to do but hasn't come up until now.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, hang on. That fucked up my whole plan for the night.
The guy
Xander bypassed an hour and a half of play the other night by using a 0 level spell to bypass a trap I had set up.
Yeah, so I guess to peek behind the curtain, that if it's not obvious, Brian has been running some Starfinder games for me and a couple of other friends for a while now. I love Starfinder. Brian, would you say that Starfinder is like maybe your favorite tabletop game that you're in right now, or not our game? Sorry, not to be like we're the special boys, right? But like of the systems that you're in, do you like Starfinder more than Pathfinder or D&D? I mean, I know you've played a mix of those. Do you have a preference for one over the other?
Yeah, it's definitely Starfinder for a variety of reasons. But
yeah. You mean nothing like the Excel spreadsheet that you put together of all the potential alien species that you could play as, which is I couldn't believe there were so many.
there are. Starfinder comes with like the core rulebook has like 8 different species or so that you can play as, but then you get to the back of the book and it has rules for all the legacy species. So that's where you have like elves and gnomes and stuff. And then every time they put out what they call the Alien Archive, which is like the monster manual of Starfinder, they have some of those species are playable species. So you added like basically like anywhere between like 3 and 6 new quote unquote races to the game with every one of those books that came out. And then a bunch of the adventures, like the pre-written adventures, come with their own playable species in them. So after a while, I was like, okay, I need a way to keep all of this straight. So I went in and set up an Excel or a Google sheet that had all these species in it. And I was like, wait a minute, there's like 85 fucking playable species in this game now.
Yeah.
And I haven't updated that in years. There's more now.
Well, I mean, and that just goes to show like how dedicated the Starfinder game or like player base is, and how dedicated Paizo is as a company to just like keep pumping out new modules. Like we're playing like a 4 or 5 book series, right? And there are dozens of those out there, right?
Yeah. I think I have 8 or 9 of these adventure paths, and they're all between 3 and 6 books long.
Yeah.
And I mean, the books are only like 80 pages, 50 to 80 pages, so they're not like massive, but each one has like the adventure that you play through and then a bit of background lore about like this part of the Starfinder universe. So like the one that we're in now, I think the back half of this book was all about like cults in Starfinder, and like how to run a cult, what cults exist, how to create your own cult. And then they'll have like alien monsters and equipment and stuff like that all tucked in the back there. Yeah.
It's very cool stuff. I mean, like the more we play in the Starfinder universe, the more I'm just like, I like this universe. I like the setting that the game has set up for you, and like how each of the adventure paths kind of affect the universe overall. So that like, I think if you set it all up, there's like a chronological thing to be like, if you've played this one, take the ending of that game or the effects of that book and apply it to this storyline. I think if I've read through some of those, I think it plays out like that, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
There'll be like some adventure paths will end at level like 6 or 7, and then they're like, hey, if you want to continue with these characters, here's how to get them into book 4 of this other adventure path.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Because some of them are only 3 books, some are 6 books. So it'll be like, we finished the Threefold Conspiracy, which is a 3-book series, and now I want to drop my players into Attack of the Swarm. So how do I get them into book 4 of Attack of the Swarm, which is the first game that I ran, which is basically Starship Troopers.
It's awesome. I without me reminiscing any further about like the amazing times.
Yeah, I could talk about this all day.
Yeah, Danny, I know you've got some questions too that we want to get to. So let's dig into what you're into.
Yeah, you guys went real deep there. I just had the Cantina Band music playing in my head. What's going on about it?
I mean, we did play not like Jedi, with the lightsaber guys in the previous game.
There's also a one-shot called Band on the Run, where you play as a space band trying to make it to the Battle of the Bands.
Hell yeah.
I ran that for Xander, his brother, and a couple of other friends.
Well, I'll use that as a segue for my question here. For those that don't know, Brian was part of the Patreon series, I Read Star Wars Comics. I think that was the name.
Yeah, I read Star Wars comic books, yeah.
Brian, what was the moment where you were like, "Oh shit, Star Wars, that's for me. Like, give me more."
Yeah, so I was before I was old enough to like be on my own after school. My parents had me in this like after school program that my school ran, my elementary school, and so one day, one of the teachers who was running it wheeled in the Laserdisc player.
Oh.
Because that's how fucking old I am.
No special editions.
Yeah, and popped on Star Wars, like A New Hope, and from then on we were playing Jedis at recess.
Yeah, dude.
Like it took root in my brain and never left, because then in 97 the special editions start coming out, so I get to go. I'm 9 years old getting to see Star Wars in theaters, which is the perfect age to go see Star Wars in theaters. And it just blew my mind.
And here we are, like 30 years later, and you're still like in the shit, right?
I just spent $100-some on Star Wars trading cards while we were recording because Danny was talking about it. It made me go, fuck it, let's ball.
Did you get in? Oh, are you?
Yeah.
So now you gotta start playing online, right?
Yeah. I told Xander too, if you guys need any common stuff from the old sets, let me know. I got bulk for days.
Xander and our friend Brandon have both already said the same thing.
Dude,
so
it's
I'm
going
to be swimming in these cards.
Excellent. We did it. Now we just need to get Nick. I know he's proofless and he can't answer this, but
listen, Nick can't. I don't think Nick can get out of the magic hole that he's in. I think that's your problem. But
Nick's in
he can be in 2 holes at once. I'll tell you that, Mike. You can be in 2 holes at once.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, since I can't get Pokemon cards for love or money at this point, I might as well get a different addiction going.
Exactly. There we go. So you've been there since day one. As of the last, like, Star Wars, fandom has gone up and down over the years. Is there like a thing that has stuck out in your mind as like, this is really good Star Wars shit in the last like decade? Like, I know it's been tough sometimes, but like overall, like, is there anything that stuck out?
Yeah, it's hard out there for a Star Wars fan sometimes. Like, sometimes. If you don't suck, it's hard to be in Star Wars fandom sometimes.
Right.
Me and Kara can go on for days about droid rights and stuff like that. But the thing that I keep going back to is the X-Wing books.
Okay.
These were releasing like late 90s, early 2000s era. But they've recently started putting out the unabridged audiobooks, which like they had abridged audiobooks for a long time. But the unabridged ones that actually have like the whole story and stuff are relatively new. So I've been really digging on those. They're narrated by this guy Mark Thompson, and I've never had a narrator give more than this guy does. These are like legitimately these Star Wars X-Wing Legends audiobooks are like the best way to absorb these stories. Between like the voices and like the effort sounds and stuff like that. They have like laser blast sounds and like music mixed into these audiobooks. They are insanely well produced.
It looks like that guy also narrated the Thrawn books back in the day. So yeah, it's good shit.
Yeah. Just look up narrator Mark Thompson on Audible. 148 results.
Right, and they're all Star Wars from the looks of it. Dude's making his money. I dig it.
Not all Star Wars, but mostly Star Wars, yeah.
Mostly Star Wars, yeah.
They always go. The audiobooks for Star Wars are great production value. Like, it really immerses you and it immerses you more. I mean, a good audiobook will stand on its own with just the narration, but yeah.
What was the Death Troopers? The Star Wars zombie novels featuring Han Solo and a prison full of zombies. I legit had to stop listening to that at work because I was in a poorly lit warehouse at night.
Oh shit.
And like there was enough like creepy zombie noises going on that I had to be like, no, this is a daytime thing.
That's great. Well, we've been running really long, and mostly because I just wanted to talk about tabletop games with Brian. So Danny, I guess we've got 2 questions I think we want to wrap with, or at least one question we want to wrap with. So Danny, what's one last question you want to give to Brian, and then we'll get into the final question here.
Well, I'm gonna skip. We'll do. Let me do 2 quick ones because I think the answer is short for you. Okay. I just want to touch on your favorite meal, Brian.
The burrito.
Yeah. Burrito. Simple answer, but
God's perfect food.
Yes. But the next one, I'll go with this one because I think it's a lot more fun. How does it feel knowing Mike for so long?
Right.
Like,
yeah, no, it's perfect. You've said we have to say nice things about Mike, and he can't do anything to stop me.
That's right.
It's been great. When I met Mike, I think we were both 20 at the time.
Yeah.
And so we were both still like just emerging from our like edgy shitlord teen years. Because Mike and I were very much the same kind of like asshole in our youth.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
But it's been truly an honor to watch like all these different versions of Mike come into being, like watching him grow and mature into the cool dude we know today. You know, like I never, when we were drinking questionable punch in Duncan's attic in 2008, freezing our asses off because people wanted to smoke, so all the windows were open in February.
Yeah.
And cut from there to officiating your wedding in 2019. It's been amazing. It's been a really fun ride. And then hopefully we're not done yet. Hopefully we continue to grow and change as we get older. Well, you know what cool old man Mike looks like.
Yeah. Listen, man, the hair's starting to go gray. I don't want to talk about it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm getting the Reed Richards like temples for sure.
Oh, look at that. While never losing a little bit of that edgelord shithead, I think. While we maintain, right?
Yeah,
I think it's still in there for both of us, Brian. I do appreciate.
Yeah, we've gotten better at managing it, is what it is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's very kind of you to say. Ditto, I guess. That's all I'll say.
Speaking of ditto,
I've known Brian long enough. It's been an absolute pleasure to know Brian for so long, in the sense of like, when I think of the people that I have consistently in my life, Brian is the number one person in most categories when I think about it. Like, longest person I live with outside of my wife, right? Which is honestly, I think a testament to like our friendship, in the sense of like we were able to live with each other over multiple units of living, right? For a very long time.
We lived together in a tiny trailer for several years and didn't kill each other.
Right. And it's ups and downs and whatever. You have roommate squabbles and shit, but like overall, I still see all of that time as like really well timed or great time spent. And I reflect on the fact that like we used to spend so much time doing nothing together, which was very, very nice. And I always think fondly about that, and how, like, again, Brian is one of my oldest friends, and I can never get over that. That's what, and Kelly and I both appreciate you to the point where we couldn't figure out what side we could put you on in the wedding. So we had you officiate because we felt like that was the elevated position, right? Very important person in my life, and I'm glad to have you on the show. Not that I don't appreciate anyone else on this show, but like, Brian, you've been like my ride or die, for lack of a better term, and I've always appreciapted that about you.
Sweet cheese, you good time boy.
One day we will, one of us will die, and we'll film a movie where we're driving off in separate directions, like Fast and the Furious. But until we get to there, hopefully we've got, like you said, many years ahead of us growing and changing as pals together. But yeah. So our final question for the show, to get back to the bullshit that is comic books and stuff like that. Knowing Danny and I for a little bit, we usually ask the question of like, what comic would you recommend us? But I wanted to shift it, if only because, like, not that you're not a big comic book fan, but I think that you've got a lot of other interests that would be very interesting to get your take on. So
there's no way I could recommend a book to you and Danny that you guys haven't already read.
That is the challenge sometimes on this show, I think. So I threw out some other options out there. So I'm curious to know, which one did you pick, and what direction are you going with this, Brian?
Yeah, so you had the idea of what Pokemon card I would assign to you guys.
Yeah.
I liked that, but I wanted to put a little twist on it. So instead, I made you guys into Pokemon gym leaders.
Yes, finally.
And what's interesting is that I had a type in mind for both of you, and then had to change it as I added Pokemon.
Interesting.
Because first I was going to make Mike the Steel type gym leader, because technology and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, we got to get Magnezone on there. And then I saw Toxtricity. And I was like, no, I got to give Mike like the heavy metal electric poison type.
Yes.
And once we got to the electric types, I'm like, well, Mike also likes cute shit sometimes. So I dropped in Emolga, which is like the flying squirrel.
Yes.
And Togedemaru, which is basically a ball of metal mouse. Mm-hmm. That shoots electricity. It's the Gen 7 Pikachu clone. Right.
I love all these Pokemon. Thank you.
Yeah, so you became the electric gym leader. And Danny, I was going to make you the fighting gym leader for wrestling, obviously. But the first thing I came to was Incineroar, who is like the heel wrestler Pokemon. But he's not fighting type. He's fire and dark. So I was like, okay, well, then Danny's got to be fire type. And then I came across Cinderace, who is like a football player. And I was like, I think Danny likes soccer. I think I remember you talking about that.
Uh-huh.
And then we got into Ninetales, very much like Naruto, the Ninetale Fox.
Come on.
Yeah. And then I threw in Darmanitan in there just because I think he also looks kind of punchy, kind of like a fighter.
I love it.
Yeah, gave you a nice little team of pugilists there.
You nailed it. I did love playing with Incineroar on Smash Bros. When they added him, I was like, what an addition as a character. So
yeah, just a big old wrestle cat.
I love it. That is I'm so pleased, Brian. You have no idea. I'm 100% buying these cards and making a gym leader challenge deck with these Pokemon in one way or another.
We need to go through the Rolodex of our artist friends and have somebody commission. So like, I want to see this.
Holy shit. Is that what we do this year? We get commissions of every person on the show as Pokemon gym leaders? Are we?
We're going to need Brian to assign more Pokemon.
Brian, we got to work on this. We'll work on this.
Yeah, all right.
We'll figure it out.
I know. I hate to make you think about Pokemon more. I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah, twist my arm, why don't you?
Well, okay, this has been a fantastic show. We went a little long, but I think it was totally worth it. Brian, if you didn't know, I love you, man, and I've appreciated all of your time on the show over the years. You've been a fantastic panelist. And, you know, I think everybody who listens to the show knows your voice and knows the kind of shit that you're into and know that you can recommend some really good stuff. So it's been a pleasure to work with you for almost fucking 10 years on the show, and knowing you for even longer has been, like I said, an absolute pleasure in my life. You know, this is a great episode. I appreciate everyone listening today. This has been a lot of fun. Danny, thank you for bringing the very cool questions. And I had a lot of fun just chatting comics with you guys today, as usual. So thank you all for listening. Thank you to Xander for editing. Next week's show begins, if I'm not mistaken, the beginning... next week's show. It's a reading episode, then we got a wrestling show, and then we begin the great guesting of 2025, where we have every single guest that's every single artist that's in the zine on the show in some capacity. So get ready for that. But thank you all for listening. As we say on every single episode, until next time, comics are good, and so are you.